Welcome to What's New in Android Development Tools. I'm Jamal, product developer of the Developer Android Experience.
And I'm Tor, and I lead engineering for the Android developer tools and libraries.
Today, we're going to talk about the evolution of Android development tools. So, if you fully aligned to using AI agents as your primary way of developing, or if you're rolling up your sleeves and architecting every detail of your app, or perhaps you operate somewhere in between, we're going to touch on the latest updates to make you successful Android developers no matter how you develop. For this talk, I will cover our recent roadmap, then Tor will go over a live demo of the latest tools, and then I'll come back for some latest updates. First, let me talk about our recent changes to our product roadmap you may have missed. Last year at Google I/O, we introduced Agent Mode, which jumped you from a development flow from just an AI assistant to a semi-autonomous agent that can generate code for you using the latest AI models. Since then, we got a ton of positive feedback from you. And based on this, the Android DevTools team has shifted how we create features going forward. We now create features for both you as the Android developer to be productive, plus the AI agents that you deploy in your code base. We know that for the majority of professional app developers, the goal is to publish your app or game onto Google Play and get into the hands of the consumers around the world. We are continuing to invest in Android dev tools to help you be productive towards this goal. As an Android developer, you're ultimately accountable for your app code works. If your coding agent makes a mistake, or goes off course, and it impacts your business, we know this responsibility lies with you. So it's a trade-off. On one hand, you have speed, where you're weighing how fast can your coding agent generate code, and on the other hand, you're balancing accuracy, meaning how can you confidently test and validate your app code and not create technical debt. When making this trade-off between speed and accuracy, we believe Android Studio is still the best place to handle both agentic workflows and in-depth technical app development. While there are now many new ways to get started with Android development, which we'll show you today, using Android Studio is our recommended path to professional developers to scale your app across all devices in the ecosystem. So let's talk about a few future updates you may have missed in Android Studio Otter. Off the top, we're making it easier to access the latest in Gemini models right in Android Studio. For some time, we have supported enterprise accounts, now called Gemini Enterprise. Right in Android Studio, you can log in with your Google Workspace or federated corporate email address and gain access to corporate-approved and managed models via Gemini Enterprise. In Android Studio Otter, we now also support Google One when you're developing under your personal Google account. So if you have a Google AI Pro or Ultra plan, you can log into Android Studio and access dedicated model capacity and Gemini models above the limited, no-cost default tier. For those AI power users who require even more quota above the Google AI plan users limits or need even more flexibility in model selection, you can also provide a Gemini API key from Google AI Studio into Android Studio. Now, we understand that we have a wide range of AI needs, and we're committed to making sure the tools of Android Studio are available to all Android developers. So in Android Studio Otter, we now allow you to bring your own model into Android Studio, choosing between a local or a remote model. A remote model selection feature is handy for perhaps you might have a corporate mandated policy to use an LLM model. You can bring those right into Android Studio. Speaking of model selection, we now know that model capabilities are changing almost on a weekly basis. So we recently published Android Bench to help you decide which model to use. This benchmark does a couple things. One, instead of relying on generic coding puzzles or coding challenges, Android Bench is built using real-world Android tasks that you use day in and day out. Two, it drives developer choice. As LLM makers improve their benchmarks against Android Bench, it ultimately drives a wider selection of models for you to choose from for Android development. In addition to proprietary models, this week we also added open models to Android Bench. This gives you even more choice when choosing the best model for you. Soon we'll be adding long-running tasks that might take you a day or two, and as well as agent evaluations. This way you can evaluate how various agent models perform across different other models. Learn more about Agent Bench and see the latest leaderboard by going to d.android.com/bench. Now, once you've checked out Android Bench and you need to use a local model on your laptop or a local area network, Android Studio has the option to point to a local LLM runner, such as Ollama or LM Studio. This allows you to download a variety of open, weighted models from the community. A local model we recommend with Android Studio, if your laptop can support it, is Gemini 4 from Google. It offers a couple things. One, it has native agentic tool calling, meaning it has built-in reasoning that makes it compatible with things like agent mode. Two, it's Android optimized. This model is trained on Android APIs and Kotlin programming. And three, it's integrated. We ensure this model works with popular runners such as Ollama and LM Studio. And like other open source models, you can run this local model completely offline and leverage your laptop security. Based on Android Bench, Gemini 4 provides very solid results in comparison to the top proprietary models. Now, once you connect to either a remote or local model, it appears in the model picker in Android Studio, giving you the flexibility to switch between models while developing. In addition to model provider selection, we introduced features specifically focused on Android workflows and aspects that are unique to Android, such as UI. Now, many times it's hard to describe to a coding agent exactly what is wrong with your UI, especially visual elements. So now in Android Studio, you can right-click on a composed preview and trigger a transformation right on the design surface to give the right context for the agent. For those of you who develop direct web links into your app, we have a new AI-powered App Links Assistant that helps you orchestrate the links, and then the tool uses AI to validate and connect those URLs to make sure they're working out of the box. Next, we added stable support for MCP servers, allowing you to integrate third-party tools into Android Studio's AI. We have a built-in gallery of some of the most popular MCP servers. So whether you want to get input designs from Figma or connect to your Firebase database, you can directly connect the agent to those MCP servers inside of Android Studio. Also built in Android Studio is the Android Knowledge Base. This feature offers a few things. Number one, updated documentation. So as you release and document new Android APIs, you pipeline those in right into Android Studio. Two, it's agent focus. You don't have to take any sort of extra work at all. Based on your question, the agent will figure out what context to use to answer questions or execute on results. And lastly, it's not only Android. We actually included Kotlin and Firebase knowledge into the knowledge base as well. Android Auto was made with 4 small releases, plus a host of new features and stability fixes. Okay, on to Android Studio Panda. In this release, we spent time on the getting started experience. First, we added a new template for Android Automotive that streamlines the creation of driving optimized apps for Android Auto and Android Automotive. We also updated the Gemini API template, which is used to add Gemini APIs into your app. This template update includes integration with Firebase AI Logic, which handles backend setup, and also minimizes the risk of leaking your API key within your app. What is great about using built-in templates is they can get up and running right out of the box without using any AI tokens. Now, if you want to take this a step further, we launched an agent-based new project wizard. With just a prompt combined with a pay plan or API key, you can create a custom Android project that's adaptive, designed nicely with Gemini Nano Banana, with all the right dependencies. Once the app is generated, you can continue to iterate that with an Android Gemini agent built in. This release also includes Android skills. Now, this is important. Even with the latest model training and documentation, sometimes the agent needs a little bit more steering to execute on the right action. This is where Android skills comes in. We include about 10 or so skills on key developer tasks that our current models fall a little short on, such as integrating the latest adaptive APIs or converting from XML to Compose. To learn more about skills, go to github/android/skills. Lastly, we added agent planning mode in this release. This is helpful when you need a little bit more pre-thinking for the API model to work through for complex problems or multi-stage issues. In this model, the agent will create an implementation plan that you can review, and then the agent will execute on that plan. Okay, so that touches on the latest updates in Android Studio Panda. Similar to Otter, we have 4 releases and a myriad of consumer canary releases in between. I would note, this release also includes a new permission model, but I'll say that for live demo in just a bit. And this brings us to Android Studio Quail, which strikes the balance of the latest in intelligent platform enhancements, as for refinements and product features that you'll see in the live demo in just a bit. Now, in addition to Android Studio, I'm also excited to talk about the launch of Android Command Line Interface. We built it to be agent first. We found that LLMs had difficulty getting things right when building and creating Android apps. So we created this app to solve that problem. As a command line tool, it is lightweight and acts as a programmatic interface from other processes on your system, including other LLMs, and also connecting right into Android Studio. The CLI also exposes Android skills and English knowledge base, allowing LLMs to leverage the latest best practices and documentation. Lastly, you can seamlessly update CLI without the need of an external SDK manager. Now, when using Android CLI to support LLM workflows, we're already seeing notable improvements in the model so far. Based on internal testing, Android development tasks were completed 3 times faster than when agents attempted the same task using only generic LLM tools. And we saw a reduction of LLM tokens by more than 70% when using Android CLI to create new projects when compared to using other generic LLM tools. So the skills package bundled into Android CLI, it's easy to add Android CLI to support a wide range of LLMs. Now, while Android Studio is still the best place for professional app development, we're using the Android CLI to extend and add new services for both developers and creators to build Kotlin Android apps. So for example, we just launched Android app creation on Google AI Studio, which enables you to create a quick prototype or personal app. With just a prompt, you can create a high-quality Android app that you can deploy right to your device. Now, behind the scenes, we actually ported the new project wizard from Android Studio and added CLI skills to power this new experience. And for those coming from other development backgrounds, Google Anti-Gravity is also a great place to start, since we now bundle in the Android CLI and Android skills. As your app grows with either AI Studio or Anti-Gravity, the Android CLI ensures you have an Android project that's easily importable into Android Studio, allowing you to easily use Android Studio's Android's different tools to polish and scale your app to reach the whole Android device ecosystem. Okay, with these updates, we're ready to jump into some demos. Tor, take it away.
All right, thank you. So yesterday in the developer keynote, Florina and Adarsh showed 8 new features for Android developers, and I can't top their demos. So instead, I'm going to show you something different that we're also working on, but be sure to check out those demos so you don't miss something new. All right, so I'm going to start on the command line, and we've had command line tools for Android since the very beginning with ADB, AAPT, DexDump, and so on. But we now have a new one, and it's basically a single command called Android, and like Git, it has a number of subcommands. So for example, Android info will tell a calling tool where the SDK is installed. The Android SDK tool will let it list or install SDKs. Here's a interesting command, a couple of commands. The emulator start command. It's been easy to start the emulator before, but this one will actually wait until the emulator's up and running before it exits, so you can chain it to something that then, for example, runs a shell command on the device. And yeah, and now I'm going to run Android Studio. Any guesses what running Android Studio will do? No, it's not going to launch Android Studio. This actually talks to a running instance of Android Studio, so you can expose all the cool features we have in Studio from other agents. And speaking of other agents, we now have the Anti-Gravity CLI. So what I've done here is I've created some journey tests. I just had Anti-Gravity do this as well. This is a list of steps to try in an app. And now I'm going to ask Anti-Gravity, actually, I'm going to grab this prompt. I'm going to ask Anti-Gravity CLI to basically look at the files in that folder, try to run and verify that this works. And if it doesn't work, tell us what's wrong. So we'll start that. This is going to run in the background. While we do some other stuff, we'll check back in later. So we're branching out to support more surfaces for Android developers and new Android developers. So the next thing I'm going to show you is in the browser. So AI Studio, Jay already mentioned this. We can start creating native Android apps. So what I did here is I asked it to create a currency converter, which figures out the target currency based on where you are. I thought that was a really good idea. Probably been done before, but so this is now going to create a native Android app, built with Gradle, Kotlin, all of it. It usually asks me in about 10 seconds to pick a design, and it's going to run it on an emulator. I've already done this in advance, so here we got to restart the emulator. It goes to sleep after a while. But you can actually drill through all the code, and let me see if it wants the design approved. Yes, here's the design approval. So we'll do that, and we'll let it keep going. This is not really a place to keep iterating on your app. You have the idea, it makes the app, and you can publish to the Play Store. If you want to keep iterating, you can now export the code, right? So you can get it all as a zip file and install in Android Studio, or you can export to Antigravity. So I'm going to do that. It's going to offer to create a bundle that has everything. And it's packaging it up, and it should send a launch command to my local Antigravity install any second now. There it is, open in Antigravity. So here is the project that it has imported. So now we can, for example, say, critique this app, find bugs, fix them. All right, so that's going to go too. So we have AI Studio, we have Antigravity, we have Antigravity with CLI, and of course we have Android Studio. So this week we launched Android Studio Quail 2, Canary, packed with features. We have completely rewritten the agent. We're calling it Agent V2. As you can see here, we have sub-agents and parallel tool calls and all of that, and we are in the process of switching out the bottom to the Antigravity SDK. So I've used a new project agent here to build my currency converter. And let me take you through some of the new features. So first of all, we have support for Gemma 4. So you can now go into the model provider. You don't have to install a third-party tool to use it. There's a new model provider. You can click to download the models that you want. I've installed several here. And now I can choose Gemma. And so we're going to set it to work on a task. So here is a screenshot from my currency app. There's this placeholder label, which is hard to read. So I'll say, please make the placeholder data only label red and bigger. All right, so that's Gemma. It's working already. Another new feature we have is support for running multiple things in parallel. So we can start a new conversation. Actually, we can also open it up in a separate tab, new agent tab. So we can give ourselves some more room, and I'll have this one show what we're already doing. That's Gemma on the right. So I'm going to say, where is the URI handler defined and used? So this is using Gemma 3.5 Flash, released yesterday. And so in a second here, it should be calling some semantic tools to find the code. You can see we now automatically pick topics for your conversations. And I guess the servers are strained. It looks like Gemma's already done, actually. That's cool. So we can take a look at what it did. So now we can see the label is red and bigger. So what we have for the screenshot test now, we officially support screenshots with the new library. We have instructions over here telling you all the steps you have to follow. Now, if you're lazy, you don't have to do that. So what I did was I actually had Gemma 4 do the conversion for me. You can see the conversation here. This was 31B. It trawled through, updated all my build files, created the tests, and so on. So we have these screenshots, and I have tests set up for this project, and we have a new feature to update the golden files. So all I have to do is say, add update reference images. This now runs a rendering of the current behavior and shows a visual diff between the reference image and the new image. So we can sort of see, like, yeah, we expected this label difference. I'm going to check this in as my new golden image, and now the test should keep passing. All right, let's check in on our, oh, it's really not happy. Try again. This is going to be a very short demo if the AI is not working. Well, maybe I'll give myself a new task. Maybe I'll try a different model. Where is the URI handler defined and used. And I will try our default model. Okay, this one's happy. All right, so you can see here that a couple of things. We have find usages and find declaration. So these are using the language smarts that understands that just because two things are called the same doesn't mean they're actually pointing to the same thing, right? Now, these are fast operations in a small project like this, but I use this agent on a code base with 15 million lines of code, and having an index makes a huge difference. You don't want to grep through all of that. One other thing to see is that we actually linkify symbols now too, so there's a pointer directly to the class, not just file names like before. So I can say, please implement this. So this is a class that is kind of unfinished, right? It has a big to-do in it. So I just asked the agent to finish implementing it. And so you can see that it did that, but we had this little warning here. And so the AI fixed the code, but then we, the agent, yelled at it and said, you introduced some new warnings in this code, right? There's a better method than what you called from the KTX library. Use that instead. So the AI immediately went, my bad, let me fix it. And so it's now corrected the code to the more canonical rule and fixed it. So that's pretty nice. Agents love to call shell commands. And so if I say, what's the current commit, this is probably going to run a shell command. It did. It called git rev parse. And notice that it didn't ask me for permission to run the git command. And that's not because I've given it control of my computer. I haven't. It's not because I've already listed anything starting with git or anything starting with git rev. It's because we basically parse lots and lots of commands, dozens of them. We know about hundreds of flags, and we've taught it what commands are safe and which ones are not. So here I can hover and say, this one was actually approved because we know it's a read operation in a folder you've already approved. If I were to say, check in the current changes, that's going to run some more git commands, some of them safe, like git status. Git commit, not so safe. And so that one I have not asked it to proceed with. So I think that sort of makes it easier to work with this. For all the little things the AI likes to do, it's not going to bother me. And so I showed you the file critic earlier. And I want to show you something cool. This is a hidden mode we have for development. Toggle show mapped tool calls. Now we can actually see that what the AI did here, it actually called a shell command. It was actually a cat with a here doc piped into a new file. But we gave it the full IDE treatment with patches, with file critic. That's because, again, we parse the shell commands. And so when we see shell commands, sed, awk, perl, cat, ls, we actually translate them back into native calls so that we get that nicer integration. And we can get, in particular, the file critic, right? Because there's almost 3,000 inspections that we have in IDE from lint and IntelliJ inspections, and they're running before and after every file write so that we're constantly guiding the AI to do the right thing. One last note on the permission model is we have a sandbox. And so we support various sandbox environments. But one cool thing here is that, if you try to run a sandbox and you try to have the sandbox run Gradle, it's going to fail because Gradle wants to touch .gradle in your home folder, which isn't in your sandbox. Well, here you can click on Show Command. Here we show you all the folders we've mounted, right? That includes the folders you've manually approved, but also things like the Android SDK. We put comments in to explain why. And the really cool bit is that you can edit this. So you can go in and add additional commands in folders if you want to read or write them, and then click Save as Custom command. Now we run that instead, so you can have the sandbox more customized to do what you want. All right. So I find myself reviewing more and more code, whether it's from coworkers who are getting more stuff done with the agent or my own iterations with the agent. But I got to say, I don't love reviewing code file by file in file system order. And so we set out to make this better. And so what I did now was I clicked in the change drawer action on a review this code. So that starts a new conversation with the agent where it's asked to review the work. It's a new conversation, so it's not influenced and biased by assumptions it already made, right? And this is not just for reviewing what the agent did. You can also use it to review CLs from random Git check-ins. And this is what I do now. When I get a long code review from a coworker, I cherry pick it, and I use the review tool, because it's so much nicer. So what I've done here is I go into the Git view, and I can click on this review button, and then I get this report. So what this is the AI is reviewing the whole commit and summarizing what it is. This is not just a summary of the commit message. This is what the commit does. And if it finds problems, it's going to list them for me. And so when I'm in that early loop of I ask the AI to do something and I'm asking it to be reviewed, I'm not going to start reading this. I'm going to go through several cycles of this of, oh yeah, well, you didn't do this. I want you to fix that. So I can choose the fixes I want and have it iterate. But when it is proud and it says this is a good commit, that's when I start reviewing the individual diffs, because my reputation's on the line if this is going to go to production or be sent to coworkers, so I want to look. So now what we've done is we've taken all the diff chunks, because I'm going to sign off on every diff chunk, right? We take all the diff chunks, but we reorder them into logical groups. And then we sort them in an order that makes logical sense. So you start where it makes sense. And so you can see I kind of get a tour here explaining what's going on. I can check off on each one of these, work my way through the diff, and I do this, with the really nice semantic syntax highlighting we have in the IDE that understands the difference between a local variable and a parameter, for example, right? Plus word-by-word diffs. And so to me, this review experience is so much better than doing it in a browser. All right, let me show you a couple more agents we're working on. We have the migration wizard. This was something we showed yesterday. This basically is an agent that has a combination of tools and skills and planning strategies. Now, importing an app like this takes a long time. I think this is over an hour, so it cannot be showed live. But I'll just kind of highlight again that there's a bunch of sub-agents that makes a plan, and I get this really long walkthrough at the end of all the things that it did. And so we try to preserve comments and the source structure so that you can keep these things in sync if you intend to keep developing both. Another migration wizard we're working on, which is arguably harder, is the Jetpack. It's the views to compose migration wizard. This is extremely important to us because we want you to stop writing code for views. Views are in maintenance mode. Compose is great. Please use it. But we know that it's really hard to switch. This is not like the Java to Kotlin migration when there was a button to convert one file at a time. So what I've done here is I've invoked migrate to compose. You can also go to a particular layout and right-click and say AI, migrate to compose. And I'm in the middle of the migration here. It produces this report that we're looking at. And you can see here, it's highlighting a quick win and some high ROI. It's basically identifying all the things that have to be done to this app. You can actually see parallel tool calls on the right because it's now asking me things like, hey, which screens do you want to start? Should you directly replace it, or do you want to put a feature flag behind it? Do you want to rip out the XML? So that's the migration wizard. I keep saying wizard. That's the migration agent. And we're working with internal teams to make sure that all the Google apps are pure compose. And so they're giving us a lot of useful feedback, and we hope to have this out very soon. I'm an optimist, but really, we want this out as soon as possible. All right, changing gears a bit, let's talk about performance. So we have a brand new profiler. This is a standalone profiler. It's called the Android Performance Analyzer. And it is a really, really powerful system profiler. It handles huge bulk data and all kinds of detailed information for investigation. This system trace profiler is also available inside of Studio. So let me show you some analysis over there. So let's see, where's the now in Android? There we go. Here is the I recorded 4 seconds of startup time in the now in Android app with the Jank and startup time plugins. Here they are. And so we can see here that we have a really long startup, over 1 second. And so I could dig into the information, but I'm lazy. I'm busy. So what I'm going to do is click on this button and say, why is my app startup so slow? It's over 1 second. And then we'll launch off an agent job to analyze this. And so what this should do is activate a skill. It's going to activate a skill, hopefully. Yeah, wow. It's going to activate a skill that knows how to do Perfetto trace analysis. It's going to download a trace processor, and it's going to then test out theories. We'll leave this running for a bit in the background and see if things get better. Meanwhile, I'll show you a couple more things in the system profiler. So the trace capture here is way more powerful than in Studio. Here you can set up a number of different CPU probes to be recorded, a huge number of GPU counters, and Vulkan layers. So one of the interesting options, which I'm connected to an emulator, doesn't have it, but on newer devices, they can capture screenshots. So if we zoom in a bit here, you can see we actually have, let me zoom out a bit, we have screenshots recorded. This is a game. So you can kind of see what's going on in the app. So if you're wondering why there was a drop frame, you go like, oh, that's when we loaded this massive model. It helps orient where you are. So this is a system trace. We're going to have a frame profiler coming out very soon too in this standalone profiler. All right, let's see if, no, we're not having luck with the AI today. So a second feature we're working on is related to memory profiling. Okay, it's finally going here. Perfetto trace analysis skill loaded. We're also working on memory tools. Memory is in very high demand right now, if you've read the news. And so it's very important as developers for us not to waste it. So we've integrated the popular and powerful leak canary tool. So what I can do now is start running my app under leak canary analysis. So you can see it launches my app. And there's this counter here, 0 retain objects. No leaks so far. That's good. Now, I've inserted the leak. That was the commit we reviewed earlier. And so when I rotate the device, we're going to start seeing leak canary detecting some leaked objects. And you can see, yeah, it's already found 3. So we're going to go ahead and force a dump. So now the leak analysis happens, and we fetch a report. And I can now start drilling into the leak canary data and figuring out what the leak is, or you guessed it, click Fix with Agent. All right, so now we're kicking off an agent run. So we have multiple running in parallel here. Start analysis and leak analysis. This is going to try to figure out what the leak is and hopefully fix it. So while that's working, let me show you that we're done something else from memory, and that is the new R8 configuration analyzer. So when you build your projects with the latest AGP, 930 alpha something, we are going to have R8 emit this report. And what this report does is it tells us about all the keep rules, not just the ones that you have in your project, but the ones you inherit from all the libraries you're using. Because some library dependencies are going to bring in these super broad keep rules that are going to keep lots of classes. And so we see right here that we have this rule is actually responsible for keeping a lot of classes. I can click on it to see exactly all the classes that are brought in. And I can also see which library brought this in. Now, in this case, this was actually a local rule in the Androidify project. So we should definitely rip that out, although it makes for a good demo. All right. Let's check back in on the OK, so it looks like it has diagnosed the leak. We can take a look at its fix. And we can review it here, or we can use the change review tool. Looks reasonable to me. Startup analysis is still going. That's OK. Let's also check in on the anti-gravity job. And it looks like anti-gravity CLI has actually done a bunch of verification, and it has found some key findings. And I'm a bad reader. Let's put my glasses on. Yeah, it found some stuff that we should probably fix. Okay, and let's also check in on AI Studio. That was the old one that we exported. This is the new one. Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure where it went. All right. So the last thing I want to show you today is to give you a sneak preview at something we're working on. It's called Light Build, and it's a new build experience for simple Android apps. So what I'm going to do is create a new project. And in the template here, I have this option, Light Build Preview. So I'm going to press Finish. I'm going to count to 3. 1, 2, and that's it, actually. It's done. So yeah. If you've created a project in Studio before, it wasn't quite that fast, I can tell you. So this is still using Maven dependencies, so we can look at them. Maven dependencies. But the difference here is that we actually also have all the resolved dependencies checked into the project. This is a bit like a lock file. It's not enforced, but you can enforce it. And that means that the IDE and the IDE can instantly download or check all the transitive dependencies. It doesn't have to gradually discover as it inspects POM files down the line. It's also nice that when you add a new dependency, you can see exactly how much you just pulled in. Now, this is fully declarative. There are no executable build files. It's all data, and that's really great for tools. That's how we can have this kind of a project experience. We don't have to run the build in dry run mode to see where things are, what we still call Gradle sync, right? Like with a Turing complete build language, this is hard, but this is all data, so we can do it. It also means that we can do compatible updates, just data. We can read older versions, so we're going to do that. And of course, it's good for agents. That's why we did it. Now, I will say that this is not meant for pro developers, right? This is meant for the kinds of simple apps that people are creating and that you've seen me create today. Let's also do a command line build just to prove that it works. I'm going to wipe the cache just so we can see some of the downloads again. Android build. And so this is actually running a Gradle build behind the scenes, although that's an implementation detail. We can always invoke it with the right setup to make sure that it's fast and incremental. And this is going into closed preview today, but we're going to hopefully open it up based on their thumbs up to public canary very soon. I'm hoping a matter of weeks. And with that, I think we're going to do some more updates.
All right, thanks, Tor. So it's great to see how the suite of Android dev tools continues to evolve to meet your development needs. From AI Studio to Android Studio, there are even more places than before to create a great Android app. All right, before we wrap up, I have a few more updates to share. So in Android Studio Quail, we also added Android developer verification support. When you get ready to publish your app bundle, we would check them your app namespace and validate it and make sure it's registered before you publish it to Google Play. Now for wireless debugging 2.0. We are continuing to invest in reliability when using ADB over your Wi-Fi network. So with the Android 17 device and Android Studio Quail, you can now change networks, restart your laptop, and your Android device will still stay connected. Pretty cool. With the latest version of Android Studio, we now bundle in the R8 skill. All you have to do is ask the agent in Android Studio to create and optimize R8 in your app, and that's it. The agent will then suggest code changes to make sure you have the most optimal R8 configuration. So using R8 is not just useful for obfuscating code, it also streamlines your code and reduces ANRs. So for example, mods will reduce over 35% of their ANRs just by updating their R8 configuration. And lastly, with the latest update of Jetpack Compose, we now have a new debugging mode for you manually to tweak and manually inspect your shared element transitions. Okay, as we head into recap, we show features that are agent-first workflows and workflows that require even more hands-on architecting and intervention, but also consider on making you more productive as an Android app developer. So if you're prototyping a brand new app on Google AI Studio with this new Kotlin support, or if you're using the Android CLI to automate and accelerate LM work in the terminal, or using the new agent manager in Google Android Gravity 2.0 to orchestrate multiple agents, we are extending the services where you can create Android apps. And as you take your app and refine and target the ecosystem of Android devices, Android Studio is more enhanced to enable your productivity than ever before. With the new agent mode skills, new performance tools, migration tools, and a new sneak preview of a brand new build system, you're equipped to balance both speed and accuracy in creating high-quality Android apps. No matter what surface you start on, we are focusing on making it easier for you and more efficient to develop great apps across the Android ecosystem. Okay, on behalf of me, Tor, thanks for watching and feedback.